So hi, good afternoon. Can you hear me all right? Yes, great. That's always good check. So my name is Anna Grüebler. I'm what you call a specialist solutions architect, and that sounds really fancy, but basically what it means is I work with my customers to help them how to apply Amazon Web Services, which is like a suite of all the products that AWS has, and in order to solve their problems. So you can think of me as kind of the person that sits between the product and the customer, goes and talks to the customer, then go back to the product team. Oh, we should improve on these features because this is something new that the customers are looking for. But also we just launched this, go to the customer and say, look, this can help you in your business. And I'm in the same team as both of them. And I'm happy to be here today with you. So from my side, I started my AI journey as an undergraduate. And I like to say I liked neural networks before they were cool. Actually, when I tried to publish in 2011, I think, I got a feedback that neural networks were not used anymore. That was actually something that somebody said to me as a reply that I wanted to use neural networks in my paper. And good thing I persevered. And in the end, now we're seeing like how do I say it? That the history has proven me right. Let's say it that way, that now neural networks can be used in many, many, many applications. And actually, it's gotten to the point that it's not even a nice to have, it's becoming expected to use that in every industry support. So today, what I'm going to do, I'm going to build on what Bogdan has shown us just now. I'm going to start with some use cases. I have very few slides, I promise, and then I'm going to go to some demos. So let's do that. That didn't work. Yeah. Nope. There you go. So some of the places where you may want to apply the neural networks and especially generative AI can be, for example, in different industries, for example, healthcare, life science, or industrial manufacturer, financial services, retail, or media and entertainment, as Bogdan was showing us before. But what does that mean? And here I have a huge block of text. I'm not going to go through all of them, but if you'd like to have a read, the overall across all of these, one of the use cases is, of course, document understanding, document summarization, going and taking all this data that you may have from transcripts, that you may have from the documents that have been saved in your database. If you're in financial services or in legal services, it can be, for example, all these legal documents, and now you're coming across a new case, similar to an existing case. In the medical science, you can have the transcript of the doctor's data, but it can also be the transcript of, for example, a digest of the latest articles that have come out in your field. What are the highlights? And then you can go and only read those articles that have the highlights that pertain to your particular issue. And this is also very useful for students. For example, if you're writing a paper or you're revising, you could use these types of technology. And I think we're going to be seeing more and more of this going on, that it will become a way to improve your productivity by saving you time in the way to find the right information. So that's one of the use cases that I think is going to be very big. Then we have other things that are a little bit more about the creation side, where the generative comes in the generative AI. Can help, for example, to help you write summaries of new data. Or if you are in retail, for example, you can use that to create a description of your article. You show it a picture and said, okay, what is the description of this? Or the other way around. Here is a description. Now, can you make me a picture of the product, of the new skirt that I'm going to be wearing? So those kind of things is how you can think about using generative AI. Now, here is an example that I quite like, and I think that didn't work. There we go. So here can we imagine like a personalized travel virtual travel agent. You can imagine this being something that you can ask questions to in the form, for example, of a chatbot. You can communicate it in regular language, and not just you who are like digital, natives and know how to use these things. For example, I have my grandmother connected to Amazon Alexa, for example, and she goes and talks to her as if she were her secretary. And that actually has given her access to a lot of technology that by typing in the phone would be just impossible. So this is the kind of things that you can do, but it can go even further. So in this case, you can have a virtual agent that you would have the data of the customer, what are their past data, what are other customers doing, what are the current promotions, and then use generative AI to find the right product for them and also to serve it in the right way. For example, by writing a personalized email for them. Then we have the other thing that some of our customers are interested in, and this is again where fine-tuning can be very important when you think about generative AI, is that you want to generate new content, but you don't want it to be generic. You want it to be in the voice of your brand, but also you want it to maybe be adapted to the person that is receiving it. Back to my grandmother, if I were to send a letter to my grandmother, probably would have to send it to the mail. But the way I would address her would be quite different, for example, to an advertisement that would appeal to me, and very different to an advertisement that would appeal to my young cousin who is just going into university. So managing these three user groups that are all now your target audience, if you are trying to help them or sell a product. And also making sure that you're not sending the wrong information and spamming everyone, because nobody wants that. And that is, again, where generative AI can help you be able to personalize this content in a way that does not require a human to be sitting there and writing personalized content for every single one of your customers. Now, another thing that you may have seen, and this is one of the main kind of like proofs of concepts of generative AI, is when we think about being able to interrogate text using natural language, being to ask questions or to ask it, for example, to generate poll questions or to find the highlights in a document or find documents that are relevant to a particular subject. So all of these things is where generative AI can make you more productive by saving you time and giving you immediately the right thing without you having to know, for example, SQL or having to have something put in this type of database. You can just upload a text that you have now in whatever format, can be even the transcript of what I'm saying now, and then go and say, right, what are the highlights? And it can give you the 5 bullet points. So just to recap, and I know Bogdan just showed you this slide, so apologies for that, is that the demos I'm going to show going forward are using 2 technologies. The first one is Amazon Bedrock, which is API-based. It's a managed service. Basically, you're not deploying any models in your account. What you do is you request to connect to Amazon Bedrock from the AWS console. In the AWS console, you have a graphical user interface with a text box where it is the playground that you can go and test out how to communicate with different models for different use cases. There are models that generate images, models that generate text, and you can try different tasks to find the right model. But also, if you're writing an application, you can connect to it, for example, through Python code from your computer and go and submit a request and then get the answer from the model. So it is, I would say, the easiest and fastest way to interact with that. And you have some parameters you can play with, but out of the box, it gets you most of the way there. Now, the other technology that will be talking today, and I'm just going to jump over this one will show the different models that are available through Bedrock. The advantage of having an API is that you are not married to a particular model. You can go and try different models out. One thing I wanted to highlight here is we've kind of locked out here in the UK that everything is in English. It's one of the most common languages at the moment. But if you wanted to do things, for example, like localization and adding additional information in different languages, translation or asking queries in different languages is supported by some of these models. So it's another way that it becomes, more democratized because more people have access to be able to work with this. And the other technology is through our SageMaker Jumpstart. So SageMaker, as you may or may not know, has anybody here used SageMaker or has any idea what SageMaker is? Can you raise your hand? All right, 1. So that's great. So when I say SageMaker, sounds fancy. What it is basically if you want to do models on the cloud. If you think about machine learning models, you have to think of your data, you have to think of your model, and then you have to think about somebody's want to talk to this model. So Amazon SageMaker creates all this infrastructure for you, so you can very easily transform your data into that format, select the right model you want to use, and then deploy the endpoint, which is basically a machine waiting for you to ask it a question, and the question is what the model is going to answer. So if you SageMaker does all that, so that you're not just working, with a computer from zero, but it's actually optimized for all of these things that every single machine learning engineer or data scientist has to do, makes that easier for you. And even within that, we made it even one step further easier by having Jumpstart, which is all of this pre-written code that you can deploy and use. So hopefully this will inspire you to go and look a little bit at SageMaker after this session to see what it can do for you. But even before trying SageMaker, I would go for Bedrock because then you don't even have to put in data. All right, let me go and show you some demos. Oh, there we go.
Yeah. Very nice.
Can you approach this microphone to me? Or?
No, that's fine.
All right, great. All right, so one of the things that we can do with generative AI is generate new text. And we can select, for example, what language we want this text generated on. So this is a generative AI to generate. The idea here is that we want to be able to generate a text. And in this case, I have selected English. And I have also the option to have it in the style of Twitter. So take a moment. I hope it is start working for me. There we go. So the first thing that comes through, if I go all the way here to the bottom, is just very simple, what time, what happened, and who did the pass, and what was the team. And then it is generating the different tweets, including, for example, Twitter handles that could be, for example, automated or could be sent to a human in the loop, ready to be deployed in the social media to have like the fastest possible sharing of this information. So imagine the case, you are watching something else and suddenly you hear about a touchdown that is coming almost real time through your tweet, and you are just in time to see the instant replay of what just happened. If a human had to test it, I mean, there could be a really good human, but they're very expensive. They might be able to do something similar, but can you do that in every language? Can you do it for all your customers everywhere? So this is where Gen AI can help you out. And there is also, let me just stop here and let me try like a little bit more poetic. Let's see, it's going to do basically the same. The input is the same. It takes a moment to start coming through because it takes a while for the game to start to actually something to happen. But that's the idea. So you can even, then select what is the thing. You can run an A/B test. Say, does this type of language work for my customers? Does this type of language work better? And then maybe even segment your customers and say something or something. So, and this is, again, this is coming out of the model and it's what it's trying to create. And again, it's the poetic style. You might want to tweak with that, depends on your audience. But it can also be used for comedy. Comedy is good. That's what your customers want. They come to be, you're in media, they want to be entertained. So keep that in mind. So that's the first one. Anybody who have a question about this one before I move to the second one? All right, now I'll go to the next one then. So this one is something that we call a solution. It's called Media to Cloud. And it's basically a suite of things that you can use to analyze and further develop media. When you say a solution, it is something that is a list of services connected in particular ways that you can deploy in your own account. So this is all open source. It's available through GitHub. You can go and download Media to Cloud, adapt it to your use case if you want, or use it as is, and you can go and use that. This is version 4. I I'm almost sure it's already deployed, but if not, it will be deployed shortly. Version 3 is definitely already available. And this is a Tumbleleaf. It's one of our movies that we produce at Amazon, and it's a little cartoon. And I don't know, I think the audio is not coming through properly, but let me just kill that audio. And then here we have the video, and what it does is you can do different things with it. One of them is just get the transcription, for example. What is the things that are being said in this? This is, again, something that we've been more or less doing for a long time. Now we're doing it better. I don't know if you've noticed, I have noticed it in the last 5 years in my mobile phone. Transcription is getting better. One of the reasons is the data sets are larger, they're large language model, and the models are getting more complex and better. So that is a where transcription is already also part of generative AI, so keep that in mind. But in particular, you can have the original transcript is not showing up. Let me just reload it. 1 second. And let's find Tumbleleaf. And let's go to the Gen AI. And here we have the same transcript I was just showing you. Or we can go a step further. We can select a model. This is a flat-team model available through SageMaker Jumpstart. And we can choose a prompt. Does everybody know what I mean by prompt? No. So prompt is basically what are you telling the large language model or the Gen AI model, and in order to then receive what is sending you. So it's like prompting a person, you know, from the theater when someone's behind and they forget the lines. So that's how you can think about it. And the better the prompt and the more detailed, or depending on the model, you might have to use certain formatting. Sometimes it can be, a lot of the time it can be a language, general language. Then you can get the output that you want. And also by changing the prompt, you can get different outputs from the same model. So I still have the Fran T10, but I can have different models. One of the things I can ask it to do is please summarize the text. So I send this request. And it starts summarizing this text for me. Take a couple of seconds. So what it's doing here is taking like all the content that is coming from this. Now, another thing that we could ask it to do is, for example, find the genre of the text or even the MPI rating. So actually, I need to wait till it finishes. But it also does, for example, a shorter version summary, meaning 1 sentence. Fig, Stick, and Chuck are playing in Tumble. And it got all that from a transcript without human intervention. But also you can have like a more multi. They start playing and then what actually are they playing with? But let's see if we can get the rating for this. And I hope this does it. It is GOPG, very it's a cartoon for children. So it's not a very, has not a high rating. You can look for the genre of the text. It's a children's cartoon. So this can help. So imagine you are, for example, a large media company that has all the videos all the way from the 20, the silver screen, and they're digitalizing all of them. And now you want to put them in a database that somebody can search and find content. For example, if they're doing a documentary for a particular actor or actress, you can use this media to cloud to automatically create a lot of metadata for your content. And whether you use that metadata afterwards by querying it with generative AI or by querying it in your database, it's all something that can be automated. Now, we can go one step further. So you remember we had the summarization that we did. Here, what it is actually doing through generative AI is taking that summary, and creating a new video. So the original video for Tumbleleaf is 25 minutes long. So what this one is doing is creating a 1.5 summary of what Tumble is. Then this is the opening. It preserves the opening, and then it jumps into the actual video. And the way it does that is it takes a transcript, then summarizes it using generative AI, and then it uses another large language model to create embeddings. Embeddings are numerical representations of text, and it also creates those embeddings on the original video transcription level. And in using another service that we have that is at AWS Web Services, Amazon Web Services, it is able to then find the part of video that is most similar to the line in the summary and stitch this together to create this summary video automatically. This can be very good for something like previously on, but it can also have applications, for example, in a lecture. You can say, what are the highlights of the latest lecture? And it will also have the point back to the original if you would like to go back and check what was actually said at that moment. And unfortunately, the audio does not work, but it also has a voiceover reading the summary in a voice generated by another language model that is, for example, using Amazon Polly. So you can even select multiple persons, or again, could be a different language. You can translate either the original text or even the summarized text, and then go from there. So this is, again, places where something that would take humans can do it. It just will take them a while. So this can help you be more productive and be faster and be able to generate this content. And again, this doesn't have to be just one program. It could be a whole season of a series. It could be yesterday's news. Or it could be, if you want to follow developments on a particular type of news over time, you could go find me all the segments that are related to this, summarize them, and now give me a video that has all the highlights. All of these things are possible using generative AI. Now, I want to go into one more demo. This demo is also using Amazon Bedrock. This is a personalized marketing content generator. And basically what it is doing, and the reason I chose this one for you today is to show you, before in the previous demo, I showed you how you can integrate Gen AI with other systems, for example, with translation or with transcription, but also with trying to stitch video together. And this one, what it does is it takes recommendations from a recommendation engine, and then that are personalized for each person, and then writes a personalized email for that user in particular. So in this case, I have created a model using Amazon Personalized. Amazon Personalized is also a managed service. You give it interaction data of a user clicks on this particular content, a user watches this particular program, and then it can create recommendations for that particular user. It's not just for media, it can also be used in retail or any particular use case where you have user interacting with something, and it was always a positive interactions. And in this case, I used the movie lens dataset, which is actually a rating dataset, but it was converted in order to create a recommendation system. And in this case, I have a user that is just user 228. They don't have any demographic information in this dataset, but in order to show you what you could do if you did know some of their demographic information, I have added here demographics on there, for example, an adult called Jane. The other thing I have done is I have calculated, and this is also something very interesting. Like Gen AI can do some basic maths, but a lot of the time it is actually faster and better, and also be able to get the right results if you just calculate it yourself through analytics. So just through analytics, I calculated from what the user has watched, what is their favorite genre. From what they've watched in the past. And in this case, it is action. So using Amazon Personalized, I can extract that the user is interested in these 3 movies. And then I have used the IMDb dataset to get the plot of these movies. In this case, Toy Story, Back to the Future, and Memento. They are not all explicitly or exclusively in the adventure category, because it is actually doing recommendations, also taking into account whatever else the customer was watching, or also whatever else the other users were doing. And then then it goes and creates a marketing email from the user. And the first ones I want to show you has what I call a simple prompt. The simple prompt looks like this. The human asks, write me a marketing email advertising several movies available in video on demand streaming platform next week, given the movie and user information below, the movies to recommend and their information contained in the movie tag. Put the email between email tags. So this is a good example where you are complementing what you're asking generative AI to do with information that comes from a different source. This is also the types of things that Bedrock Agents is able to do, but this is an example of what you could do it kind of like if you were coding it yourself. And this could be information that, in this case, comes from a recommendation system, but it could also be information from an inventory catalog. It could be information from a promotions database. It could be anything that you have access to and that you can create a piece of code that can go and retrieve that information before generating the prompt for the generative AI. And the answer to this, what I did here is just before I send it, here is all the movies, that same information that was above. I just literally pack it in the text of the request to the generative AI. And what I get out is this type of email that talks to the user. It says we have some great movies coming. I don't know, maybe make it a little bit bigger so you can read it. And it talks about the 3 movies and also like writes like at the beginning kind of introduction, taking into account the demographics that I tell But it would be even better. And if you go here, I have created now what I call the advanced prompt. Here, I'm also adding, for example, the user demographic, as well as the favorite genre of the user. Now it has, if you look at this one, it just says, hi user, because I haven't told it the name of the user, for example. Now I am sending it through the demographics of the user. I'm sending the user is a young adult called Jane, the genre is action, and the movies are all of this. This part is the same. But I've also added a little bit of additional information to the prompt. For example, that it should think of itself as a publicist, and things like I want a high converting marketing email. And this comes back to the large language model will basically only do it what you tell it to do. So the more detailed you can be and the more specific of what you're asking it to do you can be, the better the output will be. And that's why we talk about there's a new career that I saw recently that is a prompt engineer that didn't exist, I think, at the beginning of the year, but might be something you might be doing in the future, trying to figure out for different models based on both experience, but also on the data they were trained on, what kind of prompts work best to get the results you want. And taking that, you can go and get this type of email. Dear Jane, I have some fantastic action-packed movies. It is taken into account that Jane is interested in action and bringing that information into the email to make it more compelling and more likely for her to feel, all right, this email is for me. Let me read a bit further. Let me see. Again, this is a marketing example, but this can be an example that can serve you for different types of use cases where you might be getting information from using a natural language through the prompt, but also that you want the results to come back by accessing another system that has, for example, in this case, recommendations, but it can be something else. Any questions about this or the previous demo? I didn't stop about the previous one. Yes.
So I'm wondering if you, especially with enriching data, like if you're going to use generative AI to do that, is there any ways to keep like taxonomy of the output consistent over time? So, for example, if you take like YouTube videos and you wanted to like look at like trends developing over time, or TikTok videos, something like that, and you wanted to cluster it into like different categories.
When you've got a new category, how would you keep that consistent with the categories that already exist that it's generated? For example, if something came up in 2016, then disappeared as a trend for a year, but then came back, how would you maintain so that that new year identified that the original year was the same signal? Is there a way to do that?
Well, the answer is there's many ways to do that, but one way to do that is to include those in the prompt. So you can say, instead of just telling it, these are the movies that I want to see, you can ask a qualification question. Can you classify this content into a category, into one of these existing categories that I have, which is actually how the previous demo worked to do the G and PG and got the rating. That's actually what it's doing. You give it the rating category and tell it, can you categorize it as one of these? And the other thing you can do is also give us examples of this is categorized as this. This is and you give it the same style of data that you are then going to ask in your new request. And you can do that. That is all just working on the prompt. But this leads very well into my next demo. You can also fine-tune a particular model by not just using the model as is, because at the moment we're not modifying the model. We're just modifying how we interact with the model. But you can also provide additional training data for the model. You don't need to train from scratch because the majority of human language follows more or less the same rules. So it can leverage all that learning that it already did. And the only thing it would need is to learn about this additional information. Now, one thing to keep in mind when you think about how are you interacting by doing retraining as opposed to the prompt can be very up to date, almost to the minute. because that you are passing the new information that you just got from the other system into the prompt. If you wanted to retrain, first you need to have the training data, and second, you will have to spend a little bit of time and money in order to do this retraining in your own model that is hosted in your account, or for example, fine-tuning a model that is hosted on the cloud. So this kind of things is how you need to think of, to find the balance between what you're going to do. And the answer might be that it's a mix of both, a little bit of fine-tuning and a little bit of prompt engineering to get you the best possible result.
So the reason I ask is I have a problem with my own work a bit. And one of the problems I have is like I can use fine tuning or like a predefined like set of categories. But I find it difficult if something new comes up. So if there's a new spike of something which doesn't fit my fine tuning already, and I really want to look at like things which are unique in time, how can I use generative AI to capture both new things coming in while still adding to the existing database?
Yeah, and that is something that is common to a lot of machine learning. It will try to classify into what has been part of what it has trained. But it might be possible, and again, I haven't particularly tried this particular use, but it might be possible the way you can use it, for example, when you do information retrieval, that you say only retrieve information if it is within this data. And if you don't know, say you don't know. So you can actually instruct it to, if it is to not to play. But you can also see if you can play, for example, with the output. If it returns you something that is not one of these categories, then you can analyze it to see is this a new category or is it mapped to the existing category. So you can do a two-step process as well. So there is, again, it's the one thing I would say for all machine learning and not generative AI only, but any machine learning you do, always it's iterative. Your first version will not be your final version unless you are really, really lucky. Most of the time, you will get a version that is pretty good, and then you say, all right, how far can we push it? By adding additional examples, by modifying the prompt, by maybe fine-tuning. And I do have an example of fine-tuning, which is the final demo I want to show you today. And so I would like to share that. And in this case, it's actually based on images. And this is a stable diffusion model that we have fine-tuned with a few examples of Lana. I think in this case was between 10 and 15 images, and to add Lana as a person that the model now can recognize. And we have a prompt. On the left is generated by Bedrock, which is with the same prompt, a portrait of a female, young, pretty, sunglasses. And it shows a woman, so it's doing the prompt, but it is not doing Lana. And on the right, we have a stable diffusion model V2 on Jumpstart, fine-tuned with Lana's likeness. And as you can see, it is also creating a portrait of a female, young, pretty woman with sunglasses. But in this case, it actually looks like her. And if you're not very familiar, I'm going to put it a little bit higher so you can compare that it's actually like looking at it. So again, you can the advantage of fine-tuning over training your own model from scratch is that training your model from scratch requires a lot more data and requires a lot more computing, and computing is costly. However, you can still take an existing model that is already trained on humans, on sunglasses, on all the other types of things, and then just adapt it by giving a few additional examples to also be able to generate this very personalized experience, which can be a type of, for example, personalized avatar. I can see that coming in the future, being able to say, I want an avatar of me in the web, and maybe this avatar can change with the seasons. So come October, it's a Halloween one. And this can be a way, again, to take generative AI and add your own spin to it. And this is, again, where a lot of career opportunities can come for you. It's not, maybe some of you will go and say, I want to build my own foundation models. Maybe some of you will go and I want to work on data gathering and make sure I have the right data to build these models from scratch. But others of you will go and say, actually, there is a market gap for a certain type of AI that doesn't exist. Maybe it's in healthcare, maybe it's in a particular industry. And by using fine-tuning, you can create a product that is even more aligned to that industry, that then you can go on and, either gift it to the world through open sourcing or actually make some money for it. Depends on which way you go. And these are kind of the ways that you can go. or you can use it as a productivity aid by using existing models and existing works, even without fine tuning, by changing the prompt and being able to take the maximum out. And yeah, I will have any last questions before we go into that? Yes.
Question clients. Certainly. You're working mobile and web development at an agency, and we get a lot of demand from clients looking for AI-driven applications. One of the challenges we face is often the cost control factor of that, because obviously training a model can be expensive. With AWS, with the cloud services, we have things like the cost calculator, so it's very easy to benchmark things like EC2, but it's a bit trickier with AI models. I just wondered what advice you would give to businesses that are looking to experiment with AI but need to benchmark their costs.
Yeah, that's a tough one, because are you asking more around? So the answer is it depends, and here is what I would say. If you're training your own model, you can kind of benchmark it according to the amount of data that you are given, but also the size of the computing that the compute power are using, or if you're using one GPU, multiple GPUs, and that can give you an idea of to estimate that. Usually also it's a little bit harder to predict it the first time, but once you've trained it, then you know for the next time that it's going to be in that ballpark, unless you change something dramatically in your data. For fine tuning, it is usually a lot cheaper. It also depends on how many examples you provide, and also how many times you fine tune. You might be fine tuning only once, you fine tune multiple times. You can also manage your costs, like how often you do this retraining. And but yes, it's still only in its early days. I think more and more of these kind of standardized benchmarks are going to start to appear. But yeah, I would say that at the moment it's still a little bit experimental. And yes, and again, the advantage of doing this in the cloud, as versus buying your own GPU and doing it on premises, is that you can do a little bit of the experimentation, and then you say, all right, I have my budget cap. Here's an alert, and you go and shut it down, and you don't end up overpaying, or you also don't have to pre-provision when you still don't know. Am I going to use a small model? Am I going to use a medium model? Or am I going to need a very, very advanced model? And then you don't provision for a very expensive one and end up killing a mosquito with an atom bomb, which is not what you want to do. So that would be the way I would think about it. But yeah, that's a very valid question, and I think we're still early days for this particular type of technology. So I look forward to seeing more of that in the future.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Sorry. Oh, listen, thank you so much. As I'm sure you'll agree, we've had a great double act there from our keynote speakers from Amazon Web Services, both Bogdan and Anna. So I think